This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, the date is January 13th of 2020, and this is the Bocce game procedure for Special Olympics and Special Olympics Montana specifically. What we're going to be doing today is going through the proper procedure of a game of bocce, what the officials should be doing, what coaches should be doing, and what athletes and or unified partners should be doing during a game in order to keep the game moving and efficient and on time. Okay, so a game of bocce happens on a court that is approximately 12 feet wide. It should always be 12 feet wide, and it will be at state, and 60 feet long. Within that 60-foot long segment, there are two 10-foot segments and two 20-foot segments. The two 10-foot segments will often be referred to as the end zone, and the 20-foot segments are often referred to as the halves. So as you can see, there is a line that will be spray painted in the grass at state competitions, and at area competitions will be denoted as well. At the end of each 10-foot segment on the ends, at what is the end zone, and then there will be a half court line in between the two halves of the field. So if you do the math over here, 10 plus 10 plus 20 plus 20 equals that 60-foot length for the entire field. And again, it is 12 feet long. This isn't per proportion. This video is not. This graphic here is not per proportion of the actual real life court. It is just meant as a representation. It is wide enough so we can go through the game procedure. Okay, to begin a game of bocce, each team will have to have one captain assigned. For this case, we'll call this team 1, number 1, and team 2, number 1. Those will be our assigned captains. How a game begins is team 1, number 1, and team 2, number 1 will come out here with our official. And in this case, the officials are going to be the orangish red X's. Okay, your teams are going to be these folks denoted down here, and each ball that they're going to throw will be denoted by the colors. Okay, so you will, bear with me here, we will drag out our captains, will come out here to be alongside the official to start a game. The official will have a coin toss, and dependent on the schedule the official has, will choose the visitor to call a coin toss. The visitor in this case will be team 2, so team 2 number 1 would call the coin toss. So we'll say team 2 number 1 says it's heads, the official flips the coin, and it ends up being tails. Team number 1 would receive possession of the Polina, so our captains would return down here to their teammates. And team number 1 would have possession of the Polina. And for this game, the Polina will be blue. Our official then would retire off to the side of the court to watch play begin. Okay, at this point, the red team is in possession of the Polina. So here they have 3 tries, 1, 2, 3 tries to roll the Polina. Now keep in mind, a proper bocce roll is an underhand toss below the waist to roll the Polina in between this half court line and the border of this end zone. The Polina, for the initial toss, cannot go into the opponent's ends or cannot go into the end zone on the opposite side of the field. So for example, we'll say, and one thing to keep in mind here is it doesn't matter which one of these teammates for team 1 actually rolls the Polina, that they will still say team 1 number 1, the captain decides to roll the ball first. Well, that first Polina toss goes here. That would be considered an improper toss because it did not land between the half court line and the opposite end zone line. So the official would come out, pick up the ball, and return the ball back here to team 1. Now, team 1 has 3 tries to land the Polina in this zone. If they cannot do it in 3 tries, team 2 has 1 try to do that. If team 2 cannot land the ball in this zone, then the official would take the Polina and set it on the half-court line right in the middle. But for the sake of this argument, we're going to say that team 1 was able to roll the Polina and land it in that zone. We'll say it right there. At that point, team 1 would take their first red ball, and it doesn't matter which athlete or which unified partner from team 1 does it, would take their first ball and roll it towards the Polina. So we'll say team 1, teammate number 2, takes their first ball and rolls it, and it ends up right here. That is called the initial point. The initial point. And from the initial point, it is now team 2's responsibility and duty to take their green ball and roll it closer to the Polina than team 1's ball is. So for team 2, say they take their first ball and they roll it, and it ends up right here. At this point, it is obvious that the red ball was still closer to the Polina than team 2's green ball is. So team 2 would then roll their second ball. Now, it doesn't matter in what order the balls are delivered, as long as each teammate delivers 2 balls for doubles bocce. So we'll say they're going to do in a alternating order here. So team 2, number 2's first roll ends up right here. Now, at that point, obviously that ball is closer than team 1's first roll. So team 1 would then take their next ball, and their job now is to roll it closer to the Polina than the green team. So team 2's closest ball is. We'll say the next roll goes here. Obviously, team 2's ball is closer. So at team 1 would continue to roll until they can get a ball closer. And we'll say in this situation, team 1 is not able to get a ball closer. So from here, team 1 has played out all of their balls, and team 2 now plays out their final 2 balls. And team 2, depending on the situation, will either want to try to get the ball closer to the Polina or just try to be safe with their balls. Essentially, we'll say, as an example, if the red team had 2 balls right here protecting the Polina and green was still closest, green obviously might not want to roll one of their balls because it could hit the red team's ball, team 1's ball, and actually knock the Polina away from their green ball, which isn't an ideal situation because then team 1 would have the closest ball at that point. But for the sake of this game, we'll continue. Team 2 would want to roll out. We'll say they get 1 ball closer, and then this other ball ends up down here. From here, the official would come out, take a measurement with the tape measure in the official's pocket to make sure that these 2 green balls are closer than the closest red ball. And team 2, the green team, would receive 2 points for this game since they have 2 balls closer than the red team's closest ball. So down here on the scoreboard, this official would keep track of green receives 2 points. Okay, now one thing to keep in mind during a game, and you guys can strategize on this, is the Polina can be hit and other teams' balls can be hit at any time. So if red rolls this ball and it bumps into the green ball and the green ball rolls way away from the blue ball, that's okay. Similarly, if red is to roll the ball and it hits the Polina can go into this end zone. The only stipulation there is with the Polina is the initial point, so that first toss of the game, it has to land between the half court and the end zone line. But after that, it can be bumped by one team's balls into this end zone, and that is perfectly legal. Now, smaller rules being, if the Polina is hit so hard that it goes out of the court, the Polina is still considered a live ball at that point. So the green or red balls closest to the Polina without actually going out of the court of play would be the balls you would measure from to see which ball was closest. Now, if a ball, so a run of these red or green dots, if a ball goes out of the court, it is a dead ball and does not count for anything. So even if you took that red ball and put it right next to the Polina, it would not be a legal ball. It is out of the course of play. But the Polina stays in play, and you just measure the balls that are closest and still inside the court. All right, now back to our former game. Green had 2 balls that were closer, so green received 2 points for that game. Now, in order to move on to the next frame, each member of each team would flip sides down to the other side of the court. And the officials should direct them to do so. They should also have their balls rolled to them by the official out on the court that was taking the measurements. Alrighty, so there's our possession arrow. Alrighty, now the team that scored from the previous frame is the team that retains possession of the Polina. So since team 2 scored the points in the previous frame, they would take the Polina and possession of the Polina. At this point, one of the teammates on team 2 would take the Polina and again try to roll the Polina between the half-court line and the opposite end zone line. So we'll say the first roll went here, and it went all the way into the opposite end zone. That is not considered a valid throw since it's the initial throw. The official would pick it up and take it back to team 2, who would try to throw again. At this point, we'll say the ball was rolled here, and since it did not end up between here and here, again, that would not be considered a good throw and would be returned to team 2. At this point, team 2 would have one more opportunity to roll the ball there. If team 2's next roll goes here, team 2 would now lose possession, and possession would go over to team 1. Team 1 now has one opportunity to roll the ball between here and here. For the sake of this argument, we will say team 1 was unsuccessful, in which case possession goes back to team 2. Since they were unsuccessful, the official would come pick up the Polina and then pull the Polina to the half-court line and set it on the center of the half-court line. As team 2 retained possession because of team 1's failure to land the ball between the half-court line and the opposite end zone, team 2 would now begin the initial throw and receive the initial point. So we'll say team 2 hits the Polina in this situation. Team 2's ball shoots off to the side and the Polina moves down the field. That is perfectly okay. And team 1 would now have the opportunity to get their red ball closer to the Polina. So team 1 rolls their first ball. Say again, it hits the Polina and pushes the Polina down here into the end zone. At this point, team 1's ball is closer. So team 2 would now try to get their ball closer to the Polina than the red team's team 1's ball. Boom. And then boom. Okay, that ball goes down and bounces off the end line there. At that point, the red team will now take over and try to get one of their balls closer. So team 1 rolls the ball and it either bounces or rolls over, depending on what games you're at, rolls over the edge. That's now a dead ball and no longer counts towards the game. Team 1 takes their next throw and rolls it, bumps the green ball, and their ball ends up over here. At this point, team 2's ball is still closer. But as you can see, team 1 opened up a lane by hitting team 2's ball and knocking it to the side. So team 1 then rolls the ball and lands it right next to the Polina there. At this point, if there's any question about which team has the closer ball, the team can request to have a measurement. In this case, team 2 would say, official, we need to see which team's ball is closer. So the official would come out with his or her tape measure and measure the distance of each ball and its distance from the polina. So from the center of the ball to the center of the polina. In this case, we can see on the screen the red ball was closer, but although these athletes or unified partners might be 50 feet away, it might not be as easy to tell. So team 2 would roll their last ball. We'll say it rolls here. And in this case, the official would come back out, measure, and see that the red team has one ball closer to the polina than the green team's closest ball. So the red team would be awarded 1 point. Now again, after that, the teams would reset and flip sides of the court, and this style of play would continue to go on until either time expires or the maximum score limit is reached. The time for each game and the maximum score limit can vary based on the games. So be sure to check with your games organizer at either your area or state games to see what the time limit and score limit is for a game of bocce at those specific games. Coaches, for bocce coaches, they must remain away from the court and may not coach during the game. So a coach can go to a court with their athlete or their unified partners and their team, but they cannot at any point coach or interrupt the course of play. Once the team steps out on the court, it's the team's responsibility to play the game of bocce and attempt to pursue the win for themselves. Teammates can interact with each other, but they can at no point interact with a coach, parent, or fan. A warning can be handed out by officials if this does start to happen, and in extreme cases can lead to disqualification for the team that is offending. If you have any questions on the game of bocce, please reach out to the Special Olympics Montana Sports Department at the following number, 406-216-5327, and ask for the sports department.